Hello everyone, it is so good to see you. Mario Kart is swiftly boosting its way towards the Switch 2, and that has many of us excited. After, 11 long years, we will finally be getting a completely new entry into Mario's most popular spin-off series. But looking back on it, this isn't the only Mario Kart game that's been released since then, is it? And no, I don't mean the ones in the arcades or the one you can play right in your living room. Sorry, home circuit. Perhaps the most controversial moment for the series was the release of the mobile title, Mario Kart Tour. This was for a number of reasons, which we'll touch on, but I'm not as concerned about how the game started out. Since its release on September 25th, 2019, the mobile title has had regular updates of new characters, cards, tracks, events, and more for approximately 4 whole years. On October 4th, 2023, Nintendo issued a statement saying that there would no longer be any more regular updates, but players would still be free to continue enjoying the game. Oftentimes, when games are no longer making the revenue to justify the effort going right back into its updates, developers will cease service and take the entire game down, pretty much like the ill-fated Dragalia Lost. Or you might be like Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, in which Nintendo will make one final push for you to open your wallets by charging a full release version that no longer updates but can still be played for as long as you like. Mario Kart Tour is still online and can be downloaded for free, but how does it feel to play this game in 2025? After all of its updates and quality of life improvements, is it still worth opening, or should we just stick to 8 Deluxe while we look forward to the Switch 2? I got back into the seat to see how it feels with a more fresh perspective. Mario Kart is one of the most popular family-friendly games out there. A long time ago, the only means we ever had to take this game out of our TVs and into the wild were handheld titles like Super Circuit and Mario Kart DS. So, what if you had it somewhere as close to you as your phone? You could pull the game out whenever you wanted, right there in your all-in-one device. To many people out there, this sounded very appealing. But what would it look like? How would it control? And what would make it stand apart from every other entry in the series? This game can also be called Mario Kart Lite, since every track is only 2 laps, or in some cases are only just a portion of a larger track. You must use touch controls as your kart automatically drives forward. It pretty much has the auto steering and accelerating from Mario Kart 8, making you focus solely on driving. You can push and drag your finger left and right to emulate drifting like you would a controller. Items can be used by tapping or swiping your finger up or down to toss a shell in front or behind you, for example. There's some quirky little things, like if you get inked by a blooper, you can swipe your screen to remove it. That's definitely a very Nintendo way of making use of the platform that they're on. But it was, and still is, a very divisive way to translate your usual Mario Kart controls onto a mobile platform. It's not the worst, but man does it feel slippery to control in some courses. And it's those very courses that are one of Mario Kart Tour's main attractions. Many newly introduced tracks were based on real-life places like Paris, Tokyo, and Los Angeles. Rather than doing 4 sequential races in a cup, they are each divided into individual challenges in which you have to earn a high score for grand stars. These would get you season pass rewards that would refresh every time the cups rotate. Each of the tracks in the game have certain racers, karts, and gliders that perform better than others. By using the right character, you could get 2 or 3 items from a single item box, or double your score while racing to earn the best ranking more easily. By rolling 3 of the same items, you would enter Frenzy Mode, which is the equivalent of having an invincibility star, and have temporary unlimited uses of the items that you matched. This can either be somewhat underwhelming or terribly broken depending on the item. You could use any character that you want in any race, but this made it so that you were encouraged to cycle between your entire roster of characters and pull more to get better rankings. Clear content, get more rewards, get more characters to complete more content. This is pretty much the general layout for many gacha games once you strip it down to its bare bones. And yes, for those who don't know, characters in alternate outfits count as completely different racers. In order to fluff out the roster, they had to continuously release characters in new clothing or gold variations, for example, and call it a new racer. And yet, beyond those reskins, there's also so many characters that we don't see anywhere else. Hammer Bro, Monty Mole, Chargin' Chuck, King Bob-omb, Dixie Kong is here too. See, she was in Mario Kart after all. Just not on a console release. Oh, they added Poochie too? This dog drives better than I do in real life. You might notice, when setting up for a race, you see players' names from people who play the game. You might think to yourself, wow, racing with other people from around the world, it's made so easy. At least until you realize these aren't actually those people. Everyone in the main mode is AI controlled, just using names and rankings of players who have also recently logged in. And yet, somehow it doesn't stop them from being just as disrespectful sometimes. There is a truer multiplayer experience in the game, but since the app is a lot less active now, it can take a long time to form a room of players. You can do team races, which you're kind of forced into, and also traditional battles. What hurts me is that these modes weren't even the thing at launch. There were like 3 beta tests before actually implementing multiplayer on March 8th, 2020, nearly 6 months after the game's release. Imagine getting a Mario Kart, a game that focuses heavily on multiplayer, and not getting that feature until half a year later. The truth is, this game started off what pretty much every Mario Kart fan would call incomplete or entirely not following Nintendo's usual family-friendly philosophy. If you downloaded the game within the first 6 months of release and dropped it within weeks or even days, I wouldn't blame you at all. As someone who has dropped in and out of the game over the years, it's hard to look at it right now and not see all the remnants of what it was before. But despite all that, there are merits of an alright game in here. Its biggest contribution is what it influenced in the main series, the most obvious of all those things being the tracks and roster of this game. Nearly every tour track was implemented into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with the Booster Course Pass, piecing together the segments found in Tour to make rather compelling full courses. We even got some characters pulled into the main series after their debut in Tour, like Peachette and Pauline. And if there is anything that I really want them to implement in a new Mario Kart, it's the costumes. There's so many fun costumes, some taken from games like Mario Odyssey, while most of them are entirely original. Characters had variations in 8 Deluxe, starting with Yoshi and Shy Guy colors, to actual costume changes like with Link and the villagers. Mario can keep his Tanuki suit and others, just make it an alt skin. It won't be as simple as just porting costumes over since everyone in Mario Kart for Switch 2 has new art styles and models, but I'm gonna stay hopeful. Anywho, back to Tour. One of the challenges they brought back was, surprisingly, a form of mission mode. You might have to race against a giant Donkey Kong who throws those massive angry bananas from Double Dash, or do a lap while blasting as many Goombas as possible with the Super Horn. John recently did a whole video on Mario Kart DS's mission mode, and while the ones in Tour might not be as robust, I appreciate that at least some semblance of those were here. I really just want them added to the next game. The item pool is also bigger than any other Mario Kart game, or rather it draws a lot from Double Dash. Many items that went missing show up here, like the heart and the Yoshi egg. Each character has their own signature item that will only show up for them, including new items like cannons that shoot mushrooms or bob-ombs, the super bell that knocks enemies out as it rings above you, and a lot more. In general, the game seems pretty decent, yeah? There's various modes, missions, ways to earn rewards, and characters in cool alts, as random as getting some of them might be. It might not be the most fun to control, but there was still at least some incentive to play. You could even play in landscape mode. This was not something available at launch, and in reality, I don't really find that much is added by doing so. All the info you need is typically within your view, even in a vertical orientation. Have you ever played Mario Kart 8 with one friend locally? I always thought it was weird that the screen would now split vertically instead of horizontally like in older games. But in time, I realized the framing doesn't really lose much in a kart racer like this. I'm not too bothered by it. I'm more bothered that you have to keep physically switching your mobile device orientation from portrait to landscape after every race because there's no horizontal menu interface. I just end up keeping it vertical all the time now. But when it comes down to it, this is the very least of our concerns with this game nowadays. Because if you were with Mario Kart Tour on release, you witnessed something special, and maybe not in the best way. No matter how you feel about the game right now, it doesn't really hold a candle to the madness we went through upon launch. If you were to begin the game fresh back at release, you were given either Toad or Toadette as your starter. After the tutorial, you were given either Peachette, Metal Mario, or Dry Bowser. You didn't even start a Mario Kart game with Mario, and because of the way that the system works, you might not have had the Mustache Man for a very long time. The reason being, this game implemented a gacha system. Yeah, don't worry, I wasn't going to forget that. When you progress enough, you would earn rubies, the premium in-game currency, to have a chance to use the pipe. By using 5 rubies, you could fire the pipe and net you kart parts, gliders, and most notably, characters. There's your standard characters that will occur all the time, the super rarity, which are of course less common, and then the high-end rarity, which are usually your popular mainstays, most often in those fun and unique costumes that we mentioned earlier. The issue that myself and everyone else took was how aggressive the gacha rates were in this game. As with most games of this nature, getting a rare character is often in the single-digit percentages. Way back when Musician Mario was introduced, his banner had approximately a 1% chance of getting him per pool of the pipe, and that's because he was the spotlight character. Non-spotlight characters had less than a 0.3% chance of showing up. It's shockingly abysmal. Fire Emblem Heroes, while obviously not as mainstream as something like Mario Kart, usually offers a 3% rate at the minimum for a character on a focus banner, and a separate 3% for somebody who isn't. It doesn't sound like much, but these percentages can equate to a radical difference. It is crazy how much more generous Heroes is, not just with the rates, but also in giving out premium currency. Mario Kart Tour was, in comparison, rather stingy with their rubies, and people had to resort to spending real money, all just to boost their chances of getting Pauline or Peach in her winter outfit, for example. I don't think anyone would disagree with me when I say that seeing a form of loot boxes in our family-friendly Mario Kart game was disappointing and just kinda weird. And perhaps in part of player dissatisfaction, Nintendo did something which you rarely ever see other devs do, and removed the gacha system entirely. On October 4th, 2022, the entire system was revamped so pipes no longer use rubies. Those rubies could now be used to just outright buy characters in rotation at a shop. You can still earn card parts and characters from pipes, and you can still spend real money on rubies, but the major luck factor was gutted. It was a strange spot for Nintendo to be in, because these services rely on people constantly spending money for continuous updates and support. There's a Gold Pass which can get you even more rewards just for playing the game daily at $5 a month. Then you had the character packs from the early days where, oh, I could buy Diddy Kong and more rubies for $40. At that point, why don't I just buy Mario Kart on literally any other platform? It was that kind of perspective that would get people upset throughout most of this game's life cycle. Thankfully, that era is long past us, but the integrity of these games was still fairly blemished by its early days. And unfortunately for Mario Kart Tour, that is the only way that some people remember their experiences being with the game. Is the game better now? Sure, it's much less predatory to people, and you can play pretty much the whole game without spending $1. Is it worth getting into this game in 2025? I'd say no. I wouldn't invest a large amount of time into this game today. If you have a Nintendo account, are curious, and have never played it before, maybe at least just dabble with it. You're not missing out on much, especially since most of the notable content is now available on the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. That's still a mouthful, I nearly bit my tongue. But that's all I had to say about Mario Kart Tour. We were really grasping at new Mario Kart content back then, and tolerated a surprising amount when 8 was really the only thing we had to cling onto at the time. I'm curious, have you ever played Tour? Do you still open it every now and then today? Let me know down below, and if you want, you can support us by liking, subscribing, and ringing the bell. We've got a lot of Switch 2 and Mario Kart videos on the channel, with more discussions, features, and reviews on the horizon. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember to take care of yourself. Till we meet again.